What's happening, guys? This is going to be something that Matt and I are going to be doing far more frequently, especially seeing as we've got a lot more time on our hands, what with quarantine, etc. We're calling this Ollie and Matt Chew the Fat, and it's going to be a very informal discussion where we just catch up to begin with on a weekly basis, but we'll look to do these more frequently if we can fit them into our schedules. And we're basically going to pick a topic around training, nutrition, recovery, all that kind of stuff. We will no doubt kind of go off on tangents and derail somewhat if our Instagram lives are anything to go by, of course. And I'm sure things will get very crude as we go on. Matt is a filthy, filthy man. And,
buckle up.
Buckle up. Lock your kids away. Don't have them in the room when you're watching these.
Headphones are required for these, I think.
100% headphones are required. We'll do our best to keep the topic, but it will invariably go down all kinds of avenues. So be prepared for that. But we'll be looking to discuss hot topics and things that we just feel are going to be of value to you guys around training and nutrition. Today's topic is going to be on how to stick to your diet. We spoke about this on Instagram Live most recently, and it's a really good discussion. So we're going to put this in long form content on YouTube for you. This is our third attempt of recording this, Matt.
at least third, probably more like fifth.
I've actually sent my wife and my young son out of the house to go for a walk this morning so that I can have the free space and time to actually record this without children running around and screaming and throwing shit at me and stuff like that. So they'll be back imminently because we're so delayed. So we'll get stuck into it literally straight away. And Matt, if you want to kick us off with things that we can do to help us better stick to our diets. We're going to talk about all the different methods that we can look to use to stick to our diets better.
For sure. So I think the overall problem we have is that people make diets inherently much, much harder than they have to be. They make a diet something that involves suffering and difficulty, when in actual fact, you and I both understand, and hopefully all of our clients understand, that it's not, suffering isn't an inherent part of a diet, nor should it be difficult. It should be something that's set up. Now, I'm going to say this word and then I'm going to come back on myself. It should be set up to be sustainable, but fat loss shouldn't be sustainable. The diet should, the fat loss shouldn't. And I think that's a really important differentiation. So I think that's where the word sustainability really gets dragged through the mud, because it's categorically polarizing, that word. Like there's the sustainability camp, and then there's probably you and I in this camp that are like, a fat loss shouldn't be sustainable by default. If it was, you would die. If you just continue losing fat, you would fade away. You would starve. So while fat loss isn't, a diet should be set up in order to be sustainable, or at least have some amount of sustainability programmed in. So for me, things like diet breaks, things like, we'll talk about all these in a minute, but things like keeping your hyperpalatable foods in early, keeping calories as high as you can, depending on the diet. So again, looking at that non-sustainable, you and I have discussed at length the rapid fat loss protocol. Potentially we'll talk about that. But for me, to start, I think diet breaks, as per Instagram Live recently, is the big one for me. Is I think people don't factor these in either enough or at all. So what they do is they give themselves this horrible deficit, which I'm for and against, depending on the client. They put themselves in a deficit, and then that's just them indefinitely.
Yeah.
And then when things like sleep, hunger, mood, energy, cravings, when those things start to plummet, for me, that would be a point at which I would use those metrics to be like, right, client A, we need to have a diet break or a refeed or whatever the hell you want to call it. That's another problem I have, is the nomenclature around it. Is that it's like people are like, oh, it's a refeed, it's a diet break. You shouldn't necessarily need a break. A refeed I prefer, because it's inherently more suggestive of no suffering. So in short, for me, somewhere between every 2 and 4 weeks, I would give a client, I know you and I kind of differ here, but for me, every 2 to 4 weeks, I would give a client that, dependent on their metrics. So like I said, the things we're looking out for are sleep, hunger, mood, energy, and cravings. They're my sort of 5 things I would look for. When these things start to get out of whack, that can be fairly suggestive of hormonal and metabolic sort of dysregulation. Your body's your metabolism's like a thermostat or a seesaw. So the harder you push against it, the harder it will push back against you. The more of a deficit you put yourself in for the longer prolonged period of time, the harder your push is, the harder the pushback will be. And that pushback will come in the form of those 5 things, alerting you to the fact that you're not right. So your sleeping is abysmal. You're hungry all the time. Your mood is trash, which we've all seen in a diet. You and I have experienced, firsthand.
Hungry.
Energy and cravings. So if you start to crave like irrational cravings and a huge amount of cravings, and you're not pregnant, there's probably something wrong. So I'll shut up and pass over to you on that one.
Yeah. Just, I mean, to kind of elaborate on what you were speaking to there with diet breaks, and I know we've kind of both got slightly different approaches the way that we set up diet breaks for our clients. You favor a little bit more of a frequent approach, potentially spread across a shorter time frame. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. And that's an awesome method, and actually something that I'll probably consider to use with my own clients moving forwards in certain situations as well. My kind of more preferred method is a slightly more prolonged dieting phase, taking people a little bit closer to the brink of starting to feel a little bit rubbish to some degree, and then maybe implementing a slightly longer diet break. So typically, as a general rule of thumb, I'll have somebody dieting for in the region of 8 weeks, depending on the individual, of course, and then look to have a sort of 5 days back at maintenance, or maybe a little bit more, depending on how they're responding from a scale weight perspective, from a mood perspective throughout that diet break. But I'm sure you'll agree, in every instance, it's largely dependent on the individual and what sort of biofeedback we're seeing, A, throughout the deficit, and B, throughout the diet break itself. But like you touched on, the diet break is massively important and something hugely overlooked by most, unfortunately, coaches and clients. When we're talking about the hormonal response from leptin and ghrelin, these things are completely out of whack when you spend prolonged periods of time in a deficit. And if you don't address that issue, like you said, you're going to have just crazy cravings, and hunger levels are going to be through the roof. Mood is going to be through the floor. And that's where the sustainability element of a deficit is exacerbated for most people, because they physically can't push all the way through that. Yeah. And the analogy that I use with a diet break, because a lot of clients, if I try and sell the idea of a diet break to a client, I'm like, right, we're going to take 5 days back at maintenance. And I almost know that they're going to come back and say, oh, I want to keep pushing, I want to keep digging. They're seeing results, they're seeing results, and they see it almost as a weakness, especially if I'm working with like comp prep clients. They've got that kind of robotic mentality.
Yeah.
And the way that I try and sell it to them, to get them to come around to the idea that it's not taking a step backwards, is the analogy of digging a hole. So the analogy goes, if you're digging a hole, you've got 2 guys digging a hole. One person stops and comes up for air every so often and a sip of water and continues digging. He can probably get further than the guy who's just continuously digging, because he's going to run out of steam. He's going to run out of energy. He's going to be dehydrated, and he's just going to stop at a certain point. So a diet break is almost like taking a step back to take 2 steps forwards. And that usually gets clients to come around to the idea.
100%. I think that was what I was wanting to come back to you with whilst you were speaking. You've kind of articulated that as best I could. But what I would add to that is that I know you're saying you would go slightly longer than I, and then give a slightly longer diet break. My diet breaks or refeeds would be somewhere between 24 and 72 hours max, probably more like 48 most of the time. Mm-hmm. I find from my personal experience with my clients that the buy-in is easier when you're only doing 48 hours. But when I say, I need you to eat 5 days of 3,000 calories, they're like, oh my God, I'm going to get fat. It's like, no, you're not. And if anything, you're going to get leaner. And actually, in my experience, I don't know about you, when you reverse somebody from a decent deficit, like a rapid fat loss protocol, and then move them into a maintenance phase and a refeed, they will continue to tighten up around the waist, largely, in my experience, especially dudes. Like, you can take them and they will continue to tighten up. Their umbilical measurement will continue to drop. Their weight will stabilize, but they're eating more. So all those things that I listed off are all now therefore improved. Because you've had the extra food, your sleep, hunger, mood, energy, and cravings have all balanced back out. If that's the case, can you now push harder into a new phase of dieting? 1,000% you can push harder. So yeah, I agree that digging a hole analogy will be something that my clients will be sick of hearing in about 6 weeks' time, I'm sure.
And just quickly, again, and we'll probably leave it after there and talk about some other stuff, but, just touching on what you mentioned there, when you push someone back into that maintenance, or even just an ever so slight surplus, I typically usually just go back to their new maintenance. Yeah. And they continue to see scale weight loss and the appearance of getting tighter and looking leaner. there's a lot of misconceptions around that and why that's happening. But what you've got to remember is that dieting is fatiguing, on a lot of aspects of the body. And when you push someone back into maintenance, we can see upregulation in things like, metabolism to some extent. When you're giving somebody more energy to pull from, their NEAT goes up. So, they actually start expending more calories. Their mood increases, their stress levels come down, cortisol comes down, their sleep gets better. Like you said, all of these things can have a positive knock-on impact on what we're ultimately trying to achieve. And you'll often get the feedback, and I'm sure you're the same. Oh, dude, I can't believe it. I'm eating all this food and I'm still dropping weight and I'm feeling leaner, I'm feeling tighter, and glycogen's filling out and their muscles are looking bigger. And it's like, this is all part of the plan, but it's getting people to buy into it in the first place. And if you're not being coached and you don't have somebody in your corner who knows this stuff, you just end up smashing yourself into the ground, dieting, and you don't see the benefits of eating back at maintenance for a period of time.
100%. I think one of the things that you and I have agreed for this, whatever we're calling, what is this? It's not a podcast. What the hell are we doing? Whatever it is that we're doing, whatever this is, what Ollie and I had a discussion prior to coming on. We had many discussions and tried to record them. But one of the things that we agreed for this was that we didn't want this to just be like laden with jargon. And I see it a lot in this industry where coaches will be here talking down to you, just trying to confuse you with jargon so that they can be like, it's just this, there's an ego to it, but there's also like, if I can confuse you enough, I can convince you that I know more than you.
Yeah.
And Ollie and I don't want that, but I also see it as a responsibility. So what Ollie was talking about there, I feel it's my responsibility and our responsibility to tell you the technical jargon. We're not going to get into it, so that if you read it somewhere else or hear it somewhere else, you can be like, oh, that's what Ollie and Matt were talking about on Chew the Fat, where they made it actually accessible to everyone else. So what largely Ollie was referring to, and what I was referring to before that, is what you will read called adaptive thermogenesis. So effectively, when you diet down for an extended period of time, your body's not stupid. Your metabolism is going to push back, like I said earlier. And what it'll do is it will stop you from, like, you can see me, I'm quite a hyperactive. I can move around a lot. And then a lot of people will be like, oh, you can eat whatever you want. How can your maintenance be so high? Well, because my NEAT is absolutely massive. But you better believe that when I diet down for a photo shoot, I'm like, you're
dragging your heels like a zombie.
Yeah, mate. Like, and that's not through choice. That's through my metabolism's an intelligent thing. So just to clarify, we'll throw those sort of jargon bits in, and then we'll just push them to the side. But just so you know, if you read adaptive thermogenesis, that's the layman's term. We're oversimplifying crudely these topics, but I think that's what people want.
Yeah, definitely. I think we need to strike up a balance, and we're finding our feet with this as well, because we've just started this, of course, providing enough that you kind of buy into that we potentially know what we're talking about, but also not so much that we bore you off and you go elsewhere and maybe get bad information. So you'll definitely have to rein me in. I'll probably have to rein you in. We'll probably be talking about paedophilia in no time at all anyway. So we'll be fine. We'll be absolutely fine.
All good conversations go that way. That sounds so wrong, mate. They don't.
They don't.
Yesterday's Instagram Live went down the route of dogs and peanut butter, and we'll leave that there. So just so you know, that's what you're in for. If, like, that's why I said buckle up at the start. If you haven't buckled up, now's the time, my friend.
So Sophie will be home imminently. So let's get through as many of these as we can, and then let's just see how we get on. If she comes back and you start hearing dogs barking, children wailing, you know where we're at. Okay, hopefully she can lock him away and we can get some extra chat done just in a bit of peace and quiet, but we'll see.
One of the things that we touched on there at the beginning. Away. Just we don't ever, Ollie and Matt Chew the Fat does not promote the locking away of children.
No.
I'll do the legals, you continue.
Just every so often you just come in with a little disclaimer like that. Okay.
Hopefully walking about with a cage behind you.
So we touched on, you briefly mentioned rapid fat loss protocol there. So it might be an idea for us to kind of explain to the guys what we mean by that, potentially when we might use that, how we would go about doing that, and how that works and how that looks. All right.
You want me to take that one? You want me to run with that? Have you thrown me that hot potato? Right, cool. Right. Got it.
I can start with it if you want. It's up to you.
Got it. So what Ollie's referring to there is as the rapid fat loss protocol is something that both of us utilize with our clients, and there may be some nuanced differences between what Ollie does with it and what I do with it. But certainly from my perspective, taking a client, like it depends on the client, but the enormity of the deficit is going to be a client by client basis. So any deficit will derive fat loss, but for some people, dependent on their health, their biomarkers, and their goal, you might only put them in a small 10-15% deficit. But for others, where you feel that they're capable of it and their biomarkers and their health is in a good place, for me, I put them into something like a 30% deficit. I usually aim for about 33%. That's just my rule of thumb. I would put them in a 33% deficit and really push hard and dig in for a shortened period of time, which for me, I would also outline to the client at the start and say, look, Ollie, we're going to go into rapid fat loss protocol. We're going to go into a huge deficit for 33%. That's in no way sustainable. But what we're going to do is we're going to put an end goal on it. And that end goal is going to give you some light at the end of the tunnel. So this isn't going to be a walk in the park. You're probably going to be slightly hungry. We're going to do everything we can in our power to stop that, but just understand that this isn't forever. And then we're going to move into a maintenance phase. So by outlining a shorter period of time and a more aggressive fat loss, for me, you can usually get better results with clients. I'll do that as often as I can with clients. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I'm the same, man. I try and use it as much as I can. I mean, like the only instances that I probably wouldn't use something like that is if someone's got like disordered eating behavior. Sorry.
Yeah.
If I'm working with like a petite female whose maintenance calories is 1,500 calories, I'm not going to be putting in a 30% deficit. But for the most part, like I will try and use that as much as I can. Like you increase buy-in, you get quicker results earlier on when, you know, people's motivation when they start a diet is as high as it's going to be. Their energy levels are as high as they're going to be. Their hunger levels are as low as they're going to be at the start of a diet. So you capitalize on all of those things and you make as much headway in the early stages. And then all of a sudden the client's like, shit, I've lost 3 pounds this week or 4 pounds this week or 5 pounds this week. This is working. And the point that you touched on there that was like really important for people to know is that you've explained to them prior to this all happening what you're doing, how long it's going to last, what they're potentially going to feel. So they're fully prepared and equipped. And actually, clients usually gamify it. They make it a challenge. They're like, this is shit, this is hard, but I'm going to give it my best shot. And it works every single time. And then you just simply, I'm presuming you're the same, you just simply maybe give them a short diet break or a refeed at the end of that time, and then just take them into a more moderate 15-20% deficit as you would with most of your clients.
Definitely, mate. I think that's absolutely key. It's just them having an idea of how long it's going to be. And I think that especially the way the world is today, like if I say to you, like, hey, Ollie, you're in fairly good shape already. Would you like to get lean in 8 weeks, or fuck it, let's do over 30? Like, who the hell is choosing the 30 weeks? Like, yes, okay, that I'm not completely belittling that because there's actually some value in that. Like you could maintain better markers throughout and your biofeedback would be healthier. But for the most part, we live in a world where people want everything yesterday. So give them it to some extent, but give them it with the caveat of it's temporary and we need to go back into a diet break after it. And I think 100%, like they gamify and most people will be like, right, game on, let's do it. Like I'm ready for a challenge, especially like you say, when they join, like that. Nobody's more motivated than when they just sign up.
Yeah.
To go balls deep.
And then like on the contrary to that as well, nothing's more disheartening when you fork out, you financially invest in a coach, for example. So this is speaking to coaches more here now and how you might set up your clients' diets, etc. There's nothing like from your client's perspective, if they're paying you all this money, they hand over the money and then it's like week 1, slow results, week 2, slow results, week 3. You might have this like overarching view of what you want for your client and how you think is going to work best for them. And I get that, but you got to think from their point of view. They want to see results and they want to see them quickly if they're paying that amount of money, you know? So you've got to be mindful of that. And as long as you're being safe and there's reason behind what you're doing and you've explained to the client, as Matt said there, everything that they should be considering, then there's nothing wrong with taking them into that harder deficit. And actually there's research to show, better fat loss overall in 2 control groups and more sustained fat loss over the long term. So when they rechecked after, I think it was either 12 months or 16 or something like that. So, there's research backing that approach, but people are scared to do it for whatever reason. I think coaches are actually scared for their clients to go and say to other people, other coaches, friends, family, this is what they have me doing. But if you're giving the background knowledge as to why you're doing it and how it works, then you're safe.
Yeah, I think certain gym chains have been slated for it. Like as coaches, we all know who, and it doesn't make them a good or bad. It just means that there's like an industry understanding that certain transformation companies will do that. I'm not necessarily against it, as long as you're looking after people's biofeedback and also educating them in the process as a whole and the reasons why. As long as they've got armed with the what, the why, and the how, then they can go in when their pal or their mum is like, oh my God, what? They've got you on 1,400 calories or 15 or 1,600 calories. You can be like, yeah, but we're doing it for this many weeks. This, like, have a look at this study, like look at the Matador study. And we're going back into a maintenance or potentially even a surplus after that. I think if you've got that, if you're armed with those tools, I think this is what I always say, and we're going to get a wee bit off topic here, but I always say that if you give somebody a task, a client, and you don't give them the why behind the task, there's no value in the task. There's no motivation for them to actually stick to it. But if you can give them the why, they'll be motivated to stick to it, and there's now value in the task. So it's like, Matt's asked me to eat this many calories, and they understand inherently they'll lose fat. But if you tell them it's because you're going to do it aggressive and you explain everything we've just explained, now there's a why. You've got this extra level of motivation. Because you see Leo in the background. Leo's on. He's
on edge. He's on edge. So I feel as though
you got company.
No, we're all good. But he's just like, he thinks he is. I envisage him to be like dressed up as a Rambo dog when someone comes to the door, and he's just the biggest pussy of an animal you've ever seen in your life. But he's mate, he's going to kick off in a minute
just now, mate. Yeah, exactly.
He's on edge.
Neighborhood watch. He's like that gimp that like lives up the street in everyone's street, like the dad. It's like, oh, neighborhood watch. He's like the window curtain twitcher. It's got on the window.
Oh, mate.
Off, Brian.
Brian is 100% their name as well.
Oh yeah, Brian, absolute gimp. Wears a sweater vest. Do you know what I mean? One of those guys. Get in the bin, Brian. You know what? And Brian's the last fucking person that you want in a position that you were being robbed or there was anything actually bad happening.
Yeah.
I would shit the bed immediately. Fucking hate Brian.
Get in the bin, Brian. I love it.
This is what we meant about descending into nonsense. We're now making up fictitious characters who live in everybody's street. This is the safe version, to be fair.
But every street has a Brian.
100%. Every street has a Brian. Every street has a Leo, I believe. And I'd rather have Leo than Brian.
Oh, 100%. At least when you're walking past Leo in the street and you look in the window, it's like a moment of just taking away from your troubles. But living with Leo is something else entirely. He's the most annoying dog. And I spoke about this on Instagram last night. He's got an issue with his anal glands at the minute. And mate, I don't know if anyone watching this has got a dog and they've had issues with their anal glands. I can only relate the smell to like fishy, cummy shit. Essentially, it is the most disgusting combination of scents that you can have near you, and he's off. Someone's around. So,
and therein lies the lesson to cut back on licking the dog's arsehole. I've cut back significantly recently.
You cut back. Okay, at least you've cut back. That's good.
I'm not asking you to stop. Not an animal, but just. Right, next point. Hit me with one, mate.
Shall we talk about? So if we stick to kind of methods to make diet a bit more enjoyable, a bit more sustainable. Just quickly on the sustainable thing, I know you touched on it. What Matt was saying is like a diet doesn't inherently have to be sustainable. You can't sustain fat loss, but making a diet sustainable, one of the things that I try and say is like make your diet inclusive as opposed to exclusive. When most people go on a diet, the first thing they do is they get rid of all the shit they like. All the stuff they enjoy, that's gone. I can't have that anymore. That's bad for me. I need to go to chicken, broccoli, and brown rice, as you said before. And you're just setting yourself up to fail. So it might be an idea for us to talk about hyperpalatable foods at the beginning of the diet and that method of approach.
For sure. I think like Ollie and I both think that keeping hyperpalatable foods in is absolutely like paramount at the start of a diet. Now, for the large part, people are like, what the fuck is hyperpalatable? So just think super tasty, like things that you really, really like. And I ask clients to identify them at the sign up phase, actually.
Yeah.
So it's not, people get this wrong as well. So if I said to you, what's your hyperpalatable food? You're most likely going to answer with something really generic like chocolate or crisps. It could be anything, but you're going to give like a food group or a food type as opposed to a specific thing. So for me, like my examples, like I'll start like things like this. See, Jaffa cakes, like if I open a packet, I'm not having a Jaffa cake. I'll tell myself I'm having a Jaffa cake. I'm having 36. Like, and like you get,
I love that you know
like,
exactly how many there are.
I'm just guessing that's how one of my clients genuinely went to the cash and carry and bought me for my birthday like a giant wholesale box of Jaffa cakes. I'm like, mate, this is like the worst present of all time. You realize that? Like, this is like just the gift of type 2 diabetes. So Jaffa cakes, peanut M&Ms. So it's not just chocolate. Like if I get peanut M&Ms, like I have to buy the single pack, because if I buy the share bag, it's a 2,000, that's high calorie. And then crisps, it's not just crisps, is it? Like for me, there is no discussion here, people. Red Doritos are the fucking MVP of the crisp world. Ollie, tell me if I'm wrong.
No, I'm a big Red Dorito fan, to be fair. I'm glad you said that. That's a big crisp fan of mine.
They are the things that we need to keep in, but there are also things that we need to be vigilant of, because it again, it's a double-edged sword. Like, so while we both think keeping them in is key, we both think keeping them in is key if you can control it.
Yeah. You have to be sensible, and you have to be really brutally honest with yourself. Like, it's all very well and good us sitting here saying, keep those foods in, and we'll talk about the theory behind that and how we'd potentially seek to benefit from that. But it's all very well and us as coaches saying that. But if you know that is a trigger food for you, and if you've got those in your house, like Matt said with the Jaffa cakes, you can't just have one or two. He's going to have the whole pack. If you know that you have a food similar to that, then just don't keep them in the cupboards. But at the beginning of the diet, obviously they're going to give you a lot of calories for quite a small amount of food volume. As you go through the diet and you start to inevitably start plateauing with your fat loss, you need to reduce calories to continue seeing more fat loss. Well, what you can do is you can take some of those hyperpalatable or high calorie foods out and start replacing them for more nutrient dense or higher volume foods. And you will feel as though you're eating more food, but you're essentially eating less calories, and you continue seeing fat loss. So it's a great way of almost like, I hate using the word tricking in any instance within the fitness
shocks your body.
I'm not for one second saying you trick your metabolism or anything, but you kind of trick yourself into feeling as though you're eating more food because you've got rid of these high palatable foods. You've replaced them for dense, high volume foods, and you feel like you're eating more, but calories have gone down. So that's a kind of method that we both use. But just always, the caveat as always is kind of remembering, if it's a trigger food for you, if you know it's gonna affect you and you're gonna overconsume massively, just steer clear entirely.
Yeah, I mean, I think like ultimately, like you've got to identify the food as step one, and get as specific as you can, and then after that, identify, is this food going to result in me, like say it was like cookie dough Ben and Jerry's. That's the average in my opinion, but whatever. Like cookie dough Ben and Jerry's, if that food is going to result in you on the sofa in your jizz stained cotton tracksuit bottoms, like eating it out the tub, dribbling on yourself, and just kind of like wallowing in self-pity, then probably that's not the food to keep in. But if it's one of those foods that you're like, yeah, I can have a scoop of that. And this is the thing, is like, I think also educating clients with, so I think you can often turn a binge food into a non-binge food if you just educate them how to make it go further. So like, I'm getting really specific here, but a good example of this is one of my clients actually had, that's like an actual example from a live client, the cookie dough Ben and Jerry's. Said to them, it's like, cool, so limit your serving portion, have it every single day if you want it, as long as we can fit it in our macros to start with. And then put it with like a sugar-free jelly, like 2 or 3 pots of sugar-free jelly. Now you've significantly increased volume of food, but you've massively limited to 1 scoop versus 500 calorie tub. Well, how much is a Ben and Jerry's? Like 500 calories at least?
Over 1,000, dude.
Shit the bed. No thanks.
If you're not going for like the new ones that are like lower calorie, you're going for like the full fat dairy.
1,000 calories.
Yeah, over. Yeah, like 1,200 calories for most of them.
It's a no from me.
So that's a no from me, mate. I actually had one of the new ones recently. I think it's called Netflix and Chilled. It was like peanut butter ice cream with brownies and pretzels. It's actually quite nice, to be fair. But you have it, and it's like instant remorse. It's like, you know, when you, prior to obviously getting married and falling in love with your wife, etc., sleeping with very fat women, and that instant remorse. Yeah, man, that
I don't know
is
what you're talking about,
Ben
mate.
and Jerry's.
No idea what you're talking about.
Sophie's just messaged me. Let's see when she's back. Hang on 2 seconds.
Just messaged you because of that comment. Oh no, we're not live.
It's almost as though she knew what I said, probably 10 minutes away. So we're good.
We're grand.
Cool.
No, I totally agree with you, mate. So I think, like, moving on to another point, or like just one last point on that. So for me, it's an evolution of the food. So for me, red Doritos to pop chips, you know, barbecue pop chips, they're decent, mate. They are decent, crisp.
They're very nice. They're tasty.
A third of the calories, and they are very nice. They taste like they should be really have much higher in calories.
Yeah.
So Doritos, pop chips, sweet and salt popcorn, plain popcorn. Now we're moving to like adding more veg to meals.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's the sort of, and I think if you look at it as an evolution rather than so it's a sliding scale, it's a dimmer switch, not a flick switch, which is like what you alluded to at the start. Is like people are like, right, diet mode on, bye-bye,
broccoli,
all junk food. Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah.
No thanks,
No,
mate.
exactly. That would actually be a really nice Instagram post. I'm sure you could make it look sexy, where you had like the evolution of going through your diet. That's quite a cool like visual of red Doritos, pop chips, popcorn, etc. Veg.
This is the carousel of dreams for Instagram that we've just created.
That would be a lovely carousel if you just have a little bit of each next food popping into the previous post.
Outrageous, mate. Instagram semi.
Only us dickheads would get fucking hard-ons over Instagram posts.
Probably anybody watching is like, what the fuck is a carousel? A carousel is when you have more than one image on Instagram and you have to swipe. FYI, we're just talking in like we're not going to talk in jargon.
Carousel is the most jargon word that we could have used. Should we try and fit one more of these in, dude?
That's it. Cram it in.
Let's go for maybe let's talk about.
We've got notes. We're not just like randomly coming up with ideas. We made some preparation for this.
Mate, we are professionals.
Allegedly, these allegations are things I'm not sure of quite yet.
Should we talk about? Should we talk about like different methods? So we can talk about carb cycling, calorie cycling, intermittent fasting, carb backloading, things of that nature. The methods over the principles and what people might choose based on their lifestyles, etc. So I could get started with one and just say, you've got a cool anecdote about when you were in an office and you were intermittent fasting. That's a cool anecdote. You can maybe talk about that. But, you know, one of my massive ones that I use with a lot of my clients is almost like a 5-2 diet, or you can call it calorie cycling. Most of my guys and girls, they enjoy eating more food at the weekends. You know, when they're at work Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., they can be pretty well restrained. They can prep their meals, take them into work, and, you know, eat their planned meals with relative ease without going off track, as it were. And then when it comes to the weekend, then they're a bit more of a loose end and they want to maybe factor in some more calories. We need to be accounting for that. So I will basically work out what their energy balance should be across the week. And rather than having a linear approach of calories, you will eat 2,500 calories every day. They might then eat 2,300 calories Monday to Friday, and then eat 2,900 calories or whatever it is on Saturday and Sunday. Do not fucking laugh. Don't laugh at my maths. I obviously will work out.
Here it comes. He's going to do a maths.
I'll work it out a lot more accurately for my clients. I'm not just blagging it. But you get the idea. You're basically giving them a bit more free reign on the days that they need it. But still within the confinements of what they ultimately need to be doing to progressing towards the goal, which in this instance is fat loss. And that's a way of choosing a method that suits your lifestyle whilst adhering to the principles of fat loss. It's always principle over methods. The principles of fat loss is that you need to be in a calorie deficit. The method in which you get there is entirely up to you. You know, people who say shit to you like intermittent fasting is the king of dieting, or calorie cycling is the king of dieting, or carb cycling is the best for fat loss. They are talking absolute utter bullshit. Okay, the principle
is the bin. They're going to bin with Brian.
The bin is filling up, so we should keep a list of people in the bin at the minute, and then again have some sort of visual aid
I feel like
set
at
that
the
all up.
end of each episode, we should recap by saying who's in the bin and what's in the bin.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's a nice little segment.
So at the end, we can put stuff in the bin. Just to recap, Brian is thoroughly in the bin. Brian's a dick. Brian lives in your neighbourhood, wears sweater jumpers, and here, I'm neighbourhood watch. Excuse me, do not let your dog foul on this grass.
Foul. 100%.
Yeah, exactly. He uses words like dog fouling. Fuck off, Brian.
Get in the bin.
Yeah, that's it. So, Ollie's right, and I think that touches on something that I touched on in our Instagram Live. So, it's something that I picked up from Luke at Muscle Nerds. So, exercise, nutrition, dogmatism is really dangerous. It's like a really toxic thing, and it's what Ollie was alluding to of like when somebody is like absolutely attached to one methodology is actually really dangerous. And what you need to understand, and what any good coach will understand, is like if you have across the top all these different methodologies, all of which will return to one point, which is fat loss if we're taking in this context.
Yeah.
A good coach will have an understanding of all of those, every single one of them, and understand which tool works when, because everything works until it doesn't. Every diet works, like all of them work. But we just need to know when to use them. And I think it's having that kind of agnostic approach where you don't align yourself with any one. You're not the keto guy or the intermittent fasting guy. These people are really fucking annoying, in my opinion. So it's like understanding how to do it. Like Ollie said, I think beginners look at it and they look at it as like, I have this many calories and I've got 7 days. So 2,500, I'm not going to do math. They've got 2,500 calories across 7 days. And that's just how they think you have to set up a diet. Whereas Ollie said you can go 5-2. Or you can indeed go training, non-training, which a lot of my guys like. I think the majority like the 5-2 approach because people have an active social life at the weekend. They want to go and get a roast, or they want to go and like just go into their mum's for dinner on a Sunday, and they can't control what they're eating.
Every calorie, yeah, exactly, yeah.
So, but for me, a lot of the time having a training, non-training approach means you can again increase calories and carbs probably on training days and reduce on non-training days where there's less requirements. So that's another example of a way you can do it. And a third example would be intermittent fasting, which Ollie touched on there. It's like what I spoke the other day about when I worked in an office. I tried intermittent fasting for fat loss with absolutely no prior knowledge or any attempts to understand the topic. I just was like, found some website that was like, this is the only way, and found one of those zealots that's just like, this is the only thing. I was like, okay, well, I'll give this a shot. Tried that ideology of like, it's this way or that highway, and effectively just made like I ate away my personality. It was unbelievable. It was like I basically made this absolutely gigantic lunch, which effectively like just resulted in painful shits. And then I mean, I don't mean shits as in diarrhea. I mean shits as in like an absolute horsecock of a shit. Like it's not good for you. It can be, but I think I went into it with no prior knowledge, and then I remember like eating. I found a picture on Facebook Memories, and I was like absolutely appalled with myself at what I'd eaten for lunch. And it was like 2,000 calories off. Like, and you know what? It was actually 2,000 calories of relatively clean. Hate that word, but
that probably makes it fucking harder. To be fair. Oh
mate, 100%. I set this. I guess I was like, oh, this is going to be easy, and I ate like a bro diet before that, so it was effectively like a 2,000 calorie bro meal. And you can only imagine the size of this meal. It's like 3 plates on a desk in the office. And everyone's like, you are a weird bastard. I did it. And then it got to the point where it's like, I would feel amazing for like 15 minutes. And then I would feel like actual shit for the next 4 or 5 hours as I'm like literally like just like holding my eyes open like fuck. Like I like have no blood in my brain whatsoever. Like my gut is struggling. And then I remember one of the girls in the office being like, dude, like what's happened? Like you've gone like over the last month, you're like grey. You don't even look healthy. You have absolutely no chat. Like you used to be like a noisy bastard, have all the chat, like be like the Joker in the office, and now you're about as much fun as a shit in the bath. And it's purely because I was like attached to this methodology without understanding how to do it for starters, and B, just like any actual knowledge of the topic. And I think that's really dangerous, is this like just getting involved in something especially like intermittent fasting, because obviously it's inherently quite a difficult way to set up a diet.
It wasn't that dickhead that lives in a like massive mansion who like, meal one, I'll just have a black coffee. I'll then go for like 5 hours and I have another black coffee. I'll train and then I'll have 3 Reese's pieces and I'll have a KFC. Is it that guy?
And I
Is that
rubbed
the guy
a
that?
block of butter on my dick. Like that guy. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it was that guy. It was the original intermittent fasting guy. What's his name?
Yeah, I can't remember, but he's
But I
like
mean, this
quite
was
a
like
handsome chap and he's like shredded and he's
7
just
years ago, at least
cashing
for
in on
me.
it. Yeah.
I mean, like, I had no idea what I was doing. I had a good understanding of nutrition, I had a good understanding of training, and I was in good shape. But I didn't spend any time to educate myself in that. Therein lies the benefit of having a coach that does understand all those things that we had across the top before,
Yeah.
so that they can impart the why and the how to you. Because I understood the how. I didn't understand the loosely understood, and I didn't understand the why. So I just started eating. I mean, that meal was like I can still see the image in my head, and I can still feel like needing an episiotomy every time I went for a shit.
Oh man!
Shouting out the office for someone to bring in the salad spoons as forceps.
Grab it by the head.
Mate, I swear to God, I had to break its neck with a toilet brush to get it to get back.
Oh fucking hell! Okay,
Oh,
well, but mate, Sophie's going to be back imminently, and so far this has been a very professional recording with no interruptions of dogs or children. So,
professional's not the word I would use, but yeah, the quality of recording, perhaps.
Exactly. I think we should make a good effort at keeping it that way, and also let Leah. Yeah, she's 100% back. There we go.
Just as you said.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So thanks for watching, guys. Comment below if there was anything that you particularly enjoyed, anything you want to see more of, and we will see you on the next one.
Comment below what you would put in the bin, more importantly.
Oh, quickly, let's do what we'd put in what's been in the bin from
Brian,
this episode.
Neighborhood Watch wanker.
Yep. And there was
dogmatism and zealotism, if that's a word, just like zealots.
Okay.
Anything else?
I think throughout the series, we need to create an illustrative bin, with genuine things come out of it, so we can keep track of everything that's in the bin.
Roger that. Well, there's 2 things in the bin already.
Yeah, perfect.
Right, let's call it there. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Cheers.
See you next time.